If you ever thought of becoming a health coach, this episode is for you. I speak with Dr. Sandra Scheinbaum, co founder and CEO of the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy, about her 100% online teaching platform, preparing health coaches to work with either functional medicine doctors or in their own online business. This has got the 2020 digital economy written all over it. Thank you for joining me today on another episode of Hunger Hunt Feast. With me is Dr. Sandra Scheinbaum. Dr. Scheinbaum is a PhD in clinical psychology and the co-founder and CEO of the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy. Welcome, Sandy. I appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to talk with you.
Great. Well, let's now. You're a clinical psychologist, but you've moved into functional medicine. So I'm curious, what inspired that jump? Well, maybe we should start with, just for the listeners, what is functional medicine, just so people understand what that is. Let's give them a kind of a clarity on what your academy teaches and what that as opposed to allopathic medicine.
Sure. So there is a little story. If you could picture a room that is flooding and there's water everywhere on the floor. And there's some people who are frantically, they've got mops and they're trying to mop the floor to soak up all the water. But they're not realizing if they only looked up, so they're looking down at all this water on the floor, but if they only looked up at the sink, they would see that the faucet is running and therefore the sink is overflowing. That's why the floor is filled with water and there's this flood. So those people who are frantically trying to mop up the water, those are the conventional allopathic docs. They're downstream. They're not looking up. They're not looking what the cause is. And often the cause is very simple. You shut off the faucet. It might be you stop the inflammation by changing how you're eating, you're moving more. That's the functional medicine approach. So in a nutshell, it is this turning off the faucet. What it really has been described as, it's a systems-based approach. So rather than looking at you have one organ and you go to your specialist for your heart, and then you've got your skin and you have your dermatologist for that. Nobody talks to one another. Functional medicine, it's the medicine of why. So it's, why are all these symptoms popping up? Why do you have all these things going on? And more importantly, then, how can we address what's the root cause of all this? And typically that is based on changing your diet, changing your lifestyle. And we like to think that in the future, functional medicine is just good medicine. So it won't be functional medicine, it'll just be medicine.
That would be fantastic. Yeah. Absolutely. That's a great analogy. I love it. That's a fantastic way of describing it. So often medicine is in these silos that they never speak. They get about 10 minutes or so with each patient, just long enough to prescribe whatever they think is going to, like you said, mop up the floor, fix the symptom, not really handling the root cause of the problem, which may be affecting, the same root cause affecting what they're seeing four or five different docs who aren't speaking to each other.
Exactly. They're all in separate corners of the room with their individual mops. Nobody's in charge. Nobody's directing it.
Wow. So you have essentially created a coaching academy for people to become health coaches. So as opposed to a functional medicine doctor and a coach, why don't we help people understand the difference between, like, how a coach would be assisting or working alongside a functional medicine doctor, which is you're creating coaches, not doctors, to be clear.
Correct. Yes. So we realized two things.
Okay.
Number one, doctors can't do it all. They are overwhelmed. Increasingly, our healthcare system is broken and doctors are getting less and less time to be with patients. And so they are stressed. There's a high rate of burnout. And often then that leaves this patient like often lost, like, oh, there's a 2, 3 month wait often to get an appointment for a specialist. And, or perhaps I've gotten a plan of care, even from a functional medicine doctor. And I don't know, I'm confused. I don't know how to carry this out. I've got a lot of obstacles
Mhm.
to get to the success of, for example, changing my diet. And we also realized that there are a lot of people who would make fantastic coaches.
Mm.
They're not doctors. Perhaps they're already in a healthcare profession, and we do get doctors who come to train with us to be coaches. There's also a whole lot of people who are wanting to go into a different career. Perhaps they are burned out or want to transition from what they already do. Perhaps they're in corporate. They might be nearing retirement and they're thinking, well, I've been passionate about health. Perhaps they have their own health struggles. They found functional or integrative medicine. They realize this is powerful. Now I have a calling. I want to give back. I want to teach this to people. I want to help other people get well. And so this field of health coaching is exploding. Coaching is affordable. Now, many people might want to see a functional medicine doctor, but they find out, oh, it's pretty pricey. So perhaps then when there's a coach attached to that practice, then they can continue and get that follow through at a lower price point. There are also many coaches who are running their own businesses. Somebody can find coach or they can establish for themselves that business to be a coach. We have many people who enter our program. They're coaching on the side or they're adding it to what they are already do. For example, we've had a number of Pilates and yoga instructors, personal trainers, and they're finding, gee, their revenue's way down because gym memberships are down and they don't have that clientele. Well, they can add coaching to their skill set, and now they could be on Zoom and they could work with their clients. They could do virtual workouts, then they can add coaching as well. And so we see lots of different possibilities. Really, the sky's the limit.
All right. So I would imagine you've had quite a bit of interest since the pandemic, everybody working from home, looking for options. Sometimes their work's been shut down, limited, especially if you're in the health field. All the gyms closing, some of them permanently. People just don't want as much contact as well in many cases. So have you seen kind of an uptick in interest since March?
Yes, two ways. First, uh, well, I should say three. First, people are awakening to the idea of taking care of themselves, often for the first time.
Mm.
And maybe they found that this has been really hard. They're overeating, they're not moving around as much, they've been cooped up, they're lonely. And coaching can be very, very helpful for that. The other is, as you said, industries have been disrupted. So we've got a lot in their home, and our program is online. Many others are as well. And they could use this time to get new certifications to transition to a new field, or perhaps it's complementary or it's existing side by side with what they're already doing. Now they're pursuing something, gee, I really love. I've always been interested in health and taking care of myself. And then doctors as well as companies are realizing that coaches are important. They can't take care of the volume of people that they're seeing for acute care medicine. And they're struggling with, I have all these patients with type 2 diabetes and I don't know how to help them really. So I can offer them drugs, but what they really need is to be getting that support and accountability, and so important to get together as a group. That's some of the things we're most excited about, to see the growth of all different kinds of group medical visits. And in many cases, insurance is even paying for this, and coaches can facilitate those groups and they could be virtual. And we're big
Hmm.
believers in the power of that, because you're with people who are perhaps having the same symptoms you have, or they can have a hack for, oh, here's a recipe, or here's how to do something and make it easier for you. And now they feel the sense of belonging. And so it's really powerful. This is a growing movement.
Wow. So you have groups that meet with the coach on like a Zoom call? you're saying?
Yeah, yeah. See, let's say there's a bunch of people and they're all needing to lower their blood sugar,
Mm.
and so get them together and they meet and they share. There's a little bit of education. The doctor comes in, and if the doctor's coming in and even doing a virtual one-on-one visit, monitoring vital signs, that can be billed through insurance. Other groups are private pay and are affordable for people, and there's all kinds of cool things going on, and the group's in charge. So they might say, hey, can the coach teach us how to make a green smoothie? And it's kind of like a demo, and they'll go
Hmm.
back and they can share things. They can share, oh, here's what how I rearranged my pantry, and look at all the good stuff that's since I've transitioned to a keto diet, perhaps. So they share things, and so it's
Gotcha.
it's really exciting. And what we say is the community is now the medicine. People get better when they work together. We've known the power of support groups for addiction, for example, for years.
Right. Right. I was just going to say the community has got to be pretty powerful,
Yep.
even for adherence.
Yes.
To maintain not a sense of accountability, but it's not someone looking over your shoulder. It's like there's some internal motivation there to want to continue to connect, and be part of something, and they're all moving together. So it's definitely a powerful way to do that. That is filling in another need, as you might say, with the current um, state of things. We've all been so separated, and so when you can find community in their healthcare, that's awesome. I think that's really driven a lot of health movements recently, from CrossFit to just even yoga. I mean, you think of the community that works with those movements. That is what's driven them, and so I think it's incredibly wise to include that in the coaching. That's brilliant. Um, so do you need any other special background to get into coaching, or do you have people from outside of healthcare who it sounds like you said you some people who were just kind of, like you said, in retirement, or they just had downtime and they're trying a new field. So are you getting a variety of people? Is that what you're saying, from other fields other than that aren't necessarily in fitness or in nutrition or some other healthcare background?
Yeah, very, very diverse. And we have
Okay.
so many different professions represented. We have people who used to be Wall Street traders. We have people who are in
Hmm.
corporate. We have farmers. We have a pilot, somebody in the
Wow.
construction industry. We have dentists. We have pharmacists, doctors, a lot of nurses, yoga, Pilates, a lot of personal trainers, people who run health food stores. And they're just adding this. Often it's because they're realizing, like, let's say you're a massage therapist or
Hmm.
you're an acupuncturist, and so you could add coaching, and so it now gives you a different skill set, and you can engage people. Some, they're coming to you for acupuncture or massage, others are coming to you for health coaching with a functional medicine twist, or they're both. They're getting the acupuncture, the massage, or the yoga, and then they're signing up for your health coaching sessions, whether they're one on one or group. So it gives you more options. We also have a lot of people who are stay at home moms. We have people who are connected to doctors. Perhaps they have a friend who's a doctor and they study to be the coach, and now they come in and they help their friend or their spouse or somebody that is the doctor, and now they're setting up clinics together. And often they're working with their own doctor. We've had a lot of cases like that. So it's really exciting. And as far as background, what you really need is to be a good listener,
Hmm.
because coaching it's not, I'm the expert and you do it,
Right.
like the Nike, just do it. It's about that client is in control. And we call that client centered. It came from client centered psychotherapy. So, somebody who is a
Hmm.
good listener, who is just passionate about giving back and wants to see people be healthier and lead better lives. And often the people who are the most credentialed as health experts struggle the most. We have somebody is a top doctor, highly credentialed, taught functional medicine, and she went through the program as a student. And she said, it was hard for me. I wanted to be Dr. Dictator. And so she had to learn a whole different approach. But lo and behold, she found that now when she was in her doctor role, when she went back to her clinic, she was much more effective. People
Mm,
were following through. She was getting better results. And she herself was happier and less stress. We know that when you are a coach, whether you're coaching one-on-one or coaching groups, you're transformed. You walk away feeling like, wow, like I'm serving somebody, I'm with them on this journey to health, and you are being enriched. So you are, when I can use the example, when I was a psychologist, I was a health psychologist. So I was not your typical run of the mill clinical psychologist focused on what's wrong with you and you need psychotherapy for the rest of your life. And all we're going to do is talk about your mother. And instead, I was doing mind body medicine. I was really doing more of a health psychology practice. And so when I was guiding somebody through breathing, for example, this was even way back in the late 70s and early 80s, but just guiding somebody through that process, I was feeling really chill and relaxed at the same time.
gotcha. Okay, so what I heard, you have people who are working not only with doctors, some are working independently. So there's not just one parallel for someone who comes through your academy before they're going. I mean, they can really use it how they choose to, whether they're working side by side with a doctor or they're just adding it to an existing thing. They're completely independent or on their own to choose how they want to
Exactly. Yeah.
walk it out. Oh, that's great. So they really have their own business, really, essentially helping them create their own business. That's not necessarily that they can make their own schedule. They can adjust it to what their schedule is and around their existing lifestyle. That's fantastic. Well, I mean, how did you make this transition? I realize you're a health clinical psychologist, but this is still a little bit beyond that. So, or I wouldn't say beyond, outside of that paradigm. So how did you make that transition, or what inspired you to kind of go this route after you've had quite a career as a clinical psychologist? I mean, how many years were you or have you
I
worked?
was a little over 35 years. I was a clinical psychologist. Before that, I started
Wow.
out in education. I taught special education in a classroom. Then I taught at a local college. I was teaching people how to become special ed teachers and supervising them. Went on, got my doctorate, and I had trained with some of the greats in mind body medicine. We didn't have a name then. Nobody heard of breath. Like I love now it's called breath work. I mean, we were just
Right.
helping people breathe, but it wasn't a discipline. We didn't have the robust body of research. We were pioneers. Biofeedback. I was one of the first people to do a study of neurofeedback for people with attention deficit disorders,
Hmm.
and was integrating that with what we call cognitive behavior therapy, where you look at what you're thinking and you change your thoughts from catastrophizing to more rational ones so that you can then calm and quiet yourself, and putting that all together with positive psychology, again, long before that had a name. And that's where you focus on what's right with somebody and not what's wrong, and diagnose and think about just all the terrible things that they have wrong with them. And I love to teach, and I had been teaching some university courses in mind body medicine, psychology of eating, psychology of well-being, and I was also training through the Institute for Functional Medicine. So
Oh,
they are our collaboration partners. IFM trains the doctors in functional medicine. And I had gone through, I was actually the only psychologist that had gone through. This was about 10 years ago. And so I became certified, but I'm not a practitioner who could do things like order supplements or interpret labs, but I love to teach. And around the same time, I had a young associate join my practice. And so she was very go-getter and energetic. And so we love to brainstorm. And so that's how I thought, well, we can establish, we could go bigger And so first we thought, well, going bigger meant local corporate wellness events. And then we
Mm.
did that. And then going bigger meant, well, maybe we'll train some people, again, local. We were in a small office. There were no windows, this tiny little cubicle, really, in a subletted office I was using. It was in this northern suburb of Chicago. We were just thinking locally, we'll train some people to be health coaches. And then we just were at my kitchen table, thought, okay, well, what if we didn't do it local? I have the connections with IFM. What if we approach them with the idea of collaborating and partnering with them to start a school, and we make it online? And now, if we do it online, we could serve the world. And so we took a chance. And so there's always, I love to think about, the more open you are to a no, the more likely you're going to get a yes. So we knew it was
Right.
bold. We approached IFM and they were very interested. And so partnered with them and collaborated. So their faculty teaches the functional medicine principles. And we started before we were ready. Now, I want to point out that I was 65 at the time, and my contemporaries were retiring or had already retired. And so I could have stayed with what I was doing. And in fact, my husband had said, well, why do you need to do this? You have a successful practice as a psychologist. Just stay with what you're doing and then you'll retire in a few years. Well, in no way was I ready to retire. I really think when you retire, as Dan Sullivan of Strategic Coach says, when you retire, I mean, that's like you're giving a signal to the world, like, hey, come, God, come and get me. I'm no
Right.
use anymore. And so I refused to do that. And I'm energized and passionate. And we started with this mission and purpose. And our mission is to really see the day when there's a health coach in every doctor's office, and the words, "the coach will see you now," is commonplace. So
Mm.
started before we were ready. Online, we had naysayers who said, online, no, you have to have some live in person training, because how can you possibly assess competency? How can you do experiential learning if it's just online? Well, I luckily didn't listen to the naysayers. And this was in 2015. And there was this relatively new platform called Zoom. And I thought, okay, that's it. That's where we're going to do. We're going to have engaging interactions. We'll have cohort groups. And that's how we started. I said, I want cohort groups where you'll have the small clusters of students, 10, 12 people. They'll meet with a course facilitator. Yeah, we have webinars and things that are more passive learning, but the real experiential part where you learn to be a coach, you interact with your fellow students, that happens over Zoom. So we took a chance on Zoom, and I'm
Wow.
glad that we did.
Yeah, you were way ahead of the curve. Way ahead. I
Yeah.
mean, it sounds like you've been spearheading since you're through your whole career with I want to say experimental, but just progressive, just like moving forward before it becomes the established, before you have the confirmed consensus among every peer that they can find to question it. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And then you really and you went into technology 5 years ago. You're way ahead of this. You're way ahead of this current curve. Really well set up for the current climate. That's amazing. Um,
We've
I mean, it really is. That. I'm kind of in awe, because that is. You're right. I would say you would have a lot of naysayers even 5 years ago. It didn't seem like that long ago, but how much it's changed with Zoom and with online meetings and business being done in online school, and now we have majority of the country seems to have, like, they're working from home and they don't want to go back. You
Yes,
know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah.
They're like, I can do this from home. I really don't need to
Right.
go in,
Oh,
stay in
I
my
know. Yep.
PJs and
Yep.
answer the phone and get on Zoom dressed for
Yeah. Well,
the
at the
way stuff.
time, yeah, at the time when we were building this, people were saying, well, you'll be second rate. It was like these diploma mill schools that
Oh
were
yeah.
all online. You thought, well, they're not really good. You have to really be there in person to get the full experience. And I resisted that. I knew that you could do this, and so I loved Zoom, and we used it from the get go. We designed interactive experiences, and we used breakout rooms from the beginning. So that was really fortuitous. So we're ready for these challenges, and we've been guiding other people. I've been working, there's some other schools have reached out. And so we were serving people who were having a difficult time getting used to Zoom and online interactive learning. It's definitely possible. And I'm proud to say that we won the US, just the award for excellence in distance learning by the US Distance Learning Association for 2020. So I'm glad I didn't listen to those who said,
Yeah.
no, keep some of it live. You need to do that.
Absolutely. And it makes it, I would think, much more affordable for the students as opposed to going to a major university with all the overhead and maybe having to commute or live, if they're younger, living on campus or living nearby. And so, I mean, in every
Yeah.
way, it's better for the student as well as your ability to reach more people. I
We have
mean,
students in 40 countries. We have people in Saudi Arabia and Australia. We have people who work on our team who are all over the world. And so we never would have been able to get people together like that if it was live in person.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you mentioned, as we've gone through this, some terms that I'm sure not everyone's familiar with. I've probably heard, but I'm not, like positive or what was the term? Like, well, mind body medicine, and then positive psychology. Is that what you called it?
Yep.
Positive psychology. So, can you help us unpack those a little bit? Because it sounds like you work that into the coaching, as far as connectivity, as far as connecting with the patient and um, helping them, because they're basically, you're enabling the patient to change their lifestyle. You're not, as you said, you're not being the dictator coach, the doctor dictator, the dictator coach. You're walking them through something. So I'm guessing there's some correlation there with your positive psychology and a mind body medicine. You're helping them change inside out, is what it sounds like.
Exactly. Mind body medicine is a science that's studying the connection between the mind and the body. One a specialized area within that would be psychoneuroimmunology. So that's the study of your thoughts, your feelings, and those experiences that may connect with immune health, which of course is so important and is on everyone's minds right now. So if you're scared, if you're angry, if you're upset, then those feelings, you think of them as like signals. And what's going to happen? Well, it might compromise your digestion. So it's
Mm.
years ago, before mind body medicine, we would think, and I remember back in the day when here's your mind at one end and here's your body at the other end, and one's for the psychiatrist and one's for your doctor, your internist perhaps, and you don't talk. So they thought the systems didn't talk. It was all, but we know, and there was a saying that I used for years, what's real in the mind is real in the body, and vice versa. So if you're in pain, physical pain, well, think of what that's going to do to your mood. If you are experiencing anxiety, if you're worried, if you're upset, well, what's going to happen? It's going to impact your digestion. And we know a lot about the microbiome. That is all the little critters that make up. There's trillions of them in your gut and elsewhere. And
Oh
so
yeah.
that all is connected. So every thought, every feeling is making an impact. So let's say I was really tense right now. Well, I might be breathing shallowly through my chest. Another way I could show that is maybe I'm wearing my shoulders like earrings. They're touching. I'm way up here. I'm tightening all my muscles. So you muscle bracing. Perhaps you're holding your breath. Perhaps you are experiencing another physical reaction. It could even be like hold hands. People who are very nervous might find they're sweating, or each person has a different reaction. We have our own weak links to how we're going to react. So body medicine is the study of how the mind and body are connected. And
Mhm.
then it's all the different techniques and strategies. So what would biofeedback is a strategy, guided imagery, what breath work or meditation, or all of even like Tai Chi and yoga could be considered a mind body medicine modality. And so it's what do you use? And again, that's personalized. So one person might be you have a breath practice, and someone else is going to be really wanting or utilizing a different strategy
Mhm.
for mind body medicine.
Gotcha. Wow. So, and you mentioned also nutrition, and you mentioned a
And
couple
they can,
different approaches. Oh, did I cut you off? Do we freeze? Oh, there we go. Okay, we froze for a second. Um, so you mentioned nutrition earlier, but you mentioned a couple different approaches. So is there a singular sort of approach that people tend to take, or is it kind of make it fit for the client, or with some general guidelines? Like how do you? Obviously, it's very connected, and we can talk. I mean, the vagus nerve, communicates the gut to the brain, and our neurotransmitters really start in the gut, obviously. So, or many of them start in the gut for where they're created, really. So what is your general approach as far as nutrition, diet? How does that fit in with your functional approach?
so what we focus on in functional medicine is a personalized approach and not one size fits all. And that fits so well with the coach approach. So if you're a coach, and many people struggle with this when they're beginning coaches. They think, okay, I am a carnivore or I
Right.
eat a keto diet, and a client might come in who says they're a raw vegan or vice versa. And now they have an agenda, they have a theory, and they think it should be their clients should follow that. That's not coaching. You could write a book about being following carnivore or being vegan. You can blog, you can give talks, and you can educate based on your beliefs. And when you're in a coaching session with an individual, it's what fits for them. It's what's right for them. And so it's not very non-judgmental. And so what's right for one person might not be right for somebody else. So that is crucial, both for
Mm.
functional medicine and for coaching. So, and being as old as I am, I have perspective. So I remember the day when I was 100% fat free. We were so crazed back in the 80s and early 90s about this. I remember at one point we were on a road trip up to my daughters, they were little at the time, and we had to go into a restaurant. And I remember like it would be, they would have a pizza and I would pull off the meat that I would just eat the crust because that's
Oh
no
my gosh.
fat. We were vegan and dairy free, and so adamant about that. And I remember one Thanksgiving where my sister-in-law had made stuffing and it had like fat in it. And had chicken fat actually, called
Right.
we call schmaltz. And I was like, okay, like don't eat it, girls. Like you can't. I was so upset. And even the turkey, we had to bring a tofurkey or some kind of vegetarian version. And I look back at that and just think, wow, like what was I thinking? So I like to look at what the science says, and the science is always evolving. So in addition to it being personalized, it's also, where are we at in the science? And it's constantly changing and evolving. So I went through, if you were to go in my kitchen, you would see the cookbooks lined up. So here was my raw vegan days, that are my vegetarian, and there's my paleo and keto, and now looking at, sometimes shifting to sometimes more carnivore. And it's all an experiment to see how we feel, and also looking at the emerging science, because it's hard because
Yeah.
often research is flawed.
Yes.
But we just we do the best we can, and also to not get too adamant, because if you wait, if it's like the Chicago weather, you wait a day and it'll change. So
Right.
the thinking will change. And I remember years ago I would like really yell at my husband because he would have a meal and he would have steak, and he would have very limited vegetables, and I would think, oh, this is horrible. And now I'm thinking, well, that's kind of how I've been eating, and I've been paying attention to like the pounds of kale that I used to eat like a couple
Mm.
of years ago. Well, maybe that wasn't so good. That it's not like more is going to be better. So I've cut back on that a little bit and accepting a little bit more of how he eats. But I think there are certain rules that we can look at, and I think that has to do with processed foods and
Right.
avoiding factory farmed, and all of those general principles of good sourced foods.
Sure. Absolutely. I can relate to your your journey and your search, because it really is a search for what works for you. Experimentation, the N of one, you starts with your knowledge. Our knowledge shouldn't be purely sourced out of what a university tells us. It should start with, the personal experiment, and then grow out from there, and let it work with science to find what we need. But it sounds like that's what you're teaching your coaches to do with their patients. It's like help them figure out and go on their own journey rather than cut off their learning experience,
E-
like what you had.
exactly.
That
Yeah.
is that is a that is a tough part of a coach, when you've already walked the path and you kind of want to help them along faster than they're ready. That's a temptation. That's a temptation.
Yeah, yeah. They're telling you they're going through the McDonald's drive-through, and you're like itching to start lecturing them about that. But there's a way you do that that is easing them in, and it's asking the right questions
Mm,
and getting them to start to think, well, and it's like, well, how did you feel afterwards? How did you sleep that night when you went through the drive-through? And are you open to my making a suggestion? What are you able to commit to that? So it's really helping somebody to make their own discoveries.
mhm. We really do learn a lot through our mistakes and our failures, probably more so than
Oh,
we just stumble on something. So is that, you are really pressed ahead on, not only in health but in business too, with the way you've set up the school. Have you found that you've learned from, like, when you hit some obstacles, or just from those little, errors, those misdirections? Is that something you've kind of experienced and benefited from, we call it experience, right? Years on the
ab-
planet.
oh, absolutely. And one of the things that I often get into trouble for is because I'm a quick start and a visionary. And
Mm,
most people who start companies have those characteristics.
yeah.
They are great at coming up with the ideas, and then sometimes implementing and follow through don't take into account all of the things involved in that process. And so I will often come up with ideas, and then if we followed through on all of those, then we wouldn't be very successful. And luckily, I have a chief operating officer, which happens to be my daughter, and she's just a real badass. And she's able to, and probably because she's my daughter, she's able to be bold enough to say,
Mm,
okay, if we do this, then we don't have the resources on our team to work on this project. And we already committed to this. So she is that role of the integrator. There's a great book called Rocket Fuel that
mm,
describes this quite well, where you have a visionary and then you have a behind the scenes integrator. And
mm.
they are often in that position of putting the brakes on or helping the visionary, usually the entrepreneur, company founder, to really look at, well, what is it going to take in terms of the organization, in terms of the team, to build this? What are the risks? What are the obstacles? What are the challenges? And so that's a very successful model. In Rocket Fuel, they give the example of Walt Disney, who we all know, but how many people know his brother Roy? He was the integrator, he was the one behind the scenes. And sometimes that meant, again, putting the brakes on all the ideas that Walt was coming up with.
Wow. That's awesome. That's great that you have that person. So it's, I understand. My wife is the visionary. I can tell you that right now. I'm like,
Yeah.
slow down, wait, wait. No, I can relate. So that's brilliant. But that's who makes changes. That's who changes the way we do things.
Oh,
Those are
yeah.
you guys make waves, but you make them. That's how we move forward. that's how we move forward. It faster. You're the early adopters. You're beyond you're creating something for the early adopters, really. So you are spearheading progress, and so that's brilliant. And the rest of us just hope to keep up with you. But
It's a good match. And you mentioned a relationship, and I've been married 48 years, and I really needed my husband because I'm a quick start and that visionary, and he is more of the prudent, like, okay, let's plan. I remember early on when we were much younger and we were looking for our first house, and I would walk into, okay, oh, I love this one. Let's get it. Oh, please, this is a fantastic house. Say, okay, we need to get an inspection. There's going to be more. And he would look at it in a much more methodical way based on more reason and prudence. And I was ready to jump in. And there are many situations where I would jump in, both personally as well as through my business growth, that I would think, oh, if only I had waited a little bit and had more patience. So that leads to, I used to think maybe that's ADD, and it does have qualities of ADD, but it has to do with this nature. It comes from, if anyone has taken the Colby Index, having a high quick start score. And these are just who you are. And visionaries are typically, entrepreneurs and
right.
have lots of ideas.
CEOs. And
CEOs,
yeah, I
yes.
mean, definitely the personality of a CEO, without a doubt. Absolutely. That's kind of the prototype you look for. If you're looking for a CEO, you want a visionary, you want someone who's looking ahead, and you want someone who has ideas, who's not necessarily worried about the how. They're just like looking forward and leading the charge.
Yeah,
And so yeah.
There's the, we're on the hunt, that there it is. We're just going to go, we're going to fly, take off. It's like Steve Jobs, who said, if you're satisfied with version 1.0, you started too late. And that's how I operate. Okay, here's an idea. We're going to act on it. We'll revise as we go.
Gotcha. Brilliant. That's awesome. So how can people who are interested find out more about your coaching academy? Where should they look?
They can go to functionalmedicinecoaching.org to get more information.
Awesome. Okay. I'll make sure to include that in the show notes, as well as some of your social media. But I want to thank you for taking the time to come on and tell us about this. I think one, we need change in medicine. I think that's been made clear over the last year. If we didn't realize that already, it's been made clear that our immune system, we got to start here. Medicine or our health starts with here. It starts with our lifestyle, right? And but many times we need help to do that, and it's not another script necessarily. It's not another prescription. It's not another. It's like this is where it starts in here, and then that you have matched that with the current climate of online connectivity and working from home, working on your own schedule, using Zoom. Brilliant. Anybody looking for a change, I think this is where they should start looking, because you seem to have this set up for them, both in a positive impact, in a way they can make a positive impact, as well as accessibility. You fit both of those. It's very well. So I want to encourage anyone who's looking, check out functionalmedicine.org, and think about how you can, again, you can tailor it to how you're looking, whether you want to partner with a doctor or go on your own, or sideline it with a current health business that you have going on, some sort of service business. You can make it your own, but you need the education, not only in the health, but in how to coach. And I think you made that point as well, is that coaching is not, it's not drilling your ideas into someone's head. It's taking them down a pathway of transitioning towards a healthier lifestyle.
So well said. Yes.
Thank you. Well, you mapped it out. It's brilliant. It really is brilliant. So I want to thank you for your time again. I'm going to include these in the show notes, and I look forward to seeing how your academy keeps growing and serving, because I think it's doing a great purpose.
Thank you so much. And it's functionalmedicinecoaching.org.
I'm sorry, functionalmedicinecoaching.org. That's right. I'll make sure I get it correct in the links.
Awesome.